In 2018, my portraits of people looked like this. And in 2022, my drawings of people look like this. So what did I do to improve? In this video, I'm going to walk you through my journey of becoming a better artist. If you're new here, hi, I'm Brooke Glazer. I'm a professional illustrator. My art has been used in kids apparel, greeting cards, gift wrap, stationery, and more. And I have online classes where I teach topics like how to find your style, color theory, how to draw, making a living as an artist, and how to use Procreate. I'm even a top teacher on Skillshare, where my classes are some of the most popular on the platform. Okay, let's walk through how I improved my portraits. In 2017 and 18, my drawings of people looked like this. By this time, I was a full-time illustrator, even though I couldn't draw people well. But there's so many jobs that want you to draw people. You know, stuff like children's books or editorial illustration. The first thing I did to get better at drawing people was to do an Inktober drawing challenge, where I would take the time to draw people every single day for 30 days. The theme I chose for myself was fictional females, so I just chose from this list of females, and my goal was to draw bodies in lots and lots of different positions. And I think that I did a great job of doing bodies, but as you can see, there's like no consistency with the face type. There's no style of drawing faces. In fact, I'm really struggling with getting the right kind of faces. In hindsight, it's easy to see that I was trying to take on a little bit too much. I was trying to draw a variety of body positions, but that also meant that I was trying to draw faces in a variety of positions. So straight on, 3/4 angle, and profile. And I was so focused on getting the balancing act of the body looking right that I wasn't focused on getting the eyes and the nose and the mouth in the right places on the face itself. But I definitely made an improvement in how well I draw bodies. So after Inktober, I was like, I gotta do another challenge. I grew so much from doing this, so I decided to join Folktale Week, which is another art challenge that usually happens in November. And I worked on creating a consistent color palette, and it was a lot of fun, and I think I made some really great backgrounds and scenes for these. But I wasn't able to create a face that looked consistent from one illustration to the next. I didn't have a face style. I didn't know how to approach drawing faces. These were the prompts for Inktober, or for Folktale Week. And there's a handful of sketches that I never finished. After Folktale Week, I decided I'd give it another shot with a Peter Pan themed project. At that time, I was really interested in doing children's books, and so I started with this Peter Pan illustration. And so I made all of these scenes. These are like the sketches for the inside of that fort. So I really like some of these ideas. I kind of wish I'd done some of these. But again, I had no consistency in the way that I was drawing faces. So initially I drew the Peter Pan shaped face, and that's kind of like the bean shape. And so I tried to mimic that with the mermaids, but I didn't really like the style. So I tried a more realistic face style. But of course, none of that matched. In 2019, I focused on doing an Inktober on faces, since that was clearly my weakness. I made a list of traditional fairy tales, and I wanted to tweak them. So either swap the gender or the race. And I started making a lot more progress on exploring different ways of drawing features like eyes and noses and mouths, but I still didn't have a good grasp on where exactly on the face these should go. And so these are definitely improvement. But in truth, a majority of my time for this Inktober was spent on coming up with clever concepts instead of actually practicing and focusing on the drawing itself. The next challenge I tried was Toon Me, which is where you draw yourself as a cartoon. And this was a game changer, because now I was drawing features on a photo on top of where they would actually go, and it helped me really viscerally understand where features go on the face. And having an actual reference photo made a world of difference, instead of trying to draw from my imagination at that point where I was still such a beginner at drawing faces. So in 2020, I didn't do Inktober, but I did focus on trying to draw more stylized faces. And I started taking classes and doing like traditional face drawing exercises. For example, you draw a bunch of shapes here and then you try and fit the faces inside that. I was terrible at that, did not like that at all. But then I learned about approaching it when you think about where is the shadow in faces. And this really started to click for me. I really started to make progress. And then I also started doing what I call master studies. So these are not my illustrations. These are artists that I liked that I found on Pinterest, and I copied what they were doing and tried to learn what is it that they're doing that works. So I never post any of that sort of thing to social media. That's just like a personal exercise that I did for myself to get better. And in 2021, I was just completely burnt out. So in early 2021, I was doing a lot of draw this in your style, and I was too burnt out to like come up with my own concepts, but this was such a great way to be creative and explore my style and just make art without any pressure of coming up with a concept or figuring out how to lay things out. It was really therapeutic for me. But then when I tried to go back to drawing my own original characters, I started struggling again because I wasn't using a reference image. So this is meant to be Moonrise Kingdom, and I was trying to draw from my imagination. Draw this in your style is great for this because you have a built-in reference image where somebody has worked out the problems of drawing that particular face already. So, I was just trying to draw from my imagination here, and I didn't have a strong method of how do you draw from your imagination. I was just trying to fumble around. In early 2022, I visited the National Portrait Gallery Museum in Washington, D.C., and I was inspired by all the portraits I was seeing. So I pulled out my iPad in the cafe and I tried drawing faces of people who were eating lunch around me. And I felt like I was just fumbling around. I didn't know what I was doing. Nothing was working. So after lunch, I sat myself down in front of a beautiful portrait by John Singer Sargent and decided to copy it to see if I could learn anything from his work. He's known for being an absolute master of value. And it worked. Not only did I feel like I learned a lot from making this piece, it felt like it was a much more successful portrait than I'd made in a long time, and I was encouraged to continue trying. So the next day, I tried taking the things that I'd learned about adding shadows to that piece to a model that I'd seen on Pinterest. I was really focusing on, wow, I made this color really too muddy. These eyes are not the right size. The scale of this face doesn't make any sense. And I started really focusing on where I was struggling. These I all did all on a train ride. And I really was cognizant of each piece, saying like, why isn't this working? What is wrong with this piece? And trying to improve from there. And then when I got home from this trip, I got COVID. So I was laid out on the couch and I was watching Russian Doll and decided, why don't I try drawing Russian Doll? And I watched like all of season 2 of Bridgerton and was like, I'll draw the Bridgerton characters, and watched a little Queer Eye. And so this is really fun. I was really trying to find a style, but again, watching Queer Eye. And one thing that I did during this time was I did a bunch of master studies. So these are all artists that I admire. So this is a copy of Loish. This is Mavis Ruse, who I really learned like, hey, there are actual planes of the face and I need to be learning about that. This is an artist on Instagram called Urin Duo. I think it's a husband-wife team of illustrators, and I learned so much from them. So I did a lot of master studies, and this really helped me understand style a lot more. And I also started focusing more on facial anatomy. So at first, I was just copying what I saw in the photo reference, kind of the way that I normally draw. I'm comparing shapes and angles, but I started researching and learning about technical methods for drawing faces, like the Loomis and Riley methods. And at this point, I was probably drawing at least one portrait a day, and it became more of a practice session and less of trying to draw something perfect. I was trying to get better at one or two aspects with each portrait. Whatever aspect I had struggled with on yesterday's portrait, I would make that the focus of the next day's portrait. And after drawing, I'd often Google tutorials on drawing the area that I struggled with, or look at artists that I admire to see how they approach that part of the face that I was currently struggling with. I wanted to draw a character for, this is supposed to be over the garden wall, and I realized like I really didn't know how to draw from imagination. I could only draw from reference, and so I created a face grid that laid out where the features of the face went and tried drawing from imagination instead of using a reference image. Every time I draw a nose, I felt like it looked bad, so I did a session just drawing noses to have some concentrated practice on understanding the subtle shapes in the nose. Did the same portrait, but tried different kinds of features. I know these probably all look the same to anybody else, but to me, there's like these very subtle difference in eye shape and in the way that I did lip shape, and so I was just trying to explore. And I have like a lot of like sketches that didn't get finished, but You know, I started to learn different methods for drawing the face. And I started learning different ways of approaching shading and understanding cast shadows and form shadows and ambient occlusion. Most of these are just portraits from Pinterest that I'm studying and figuring out how can I stylize these. So I'm still figuring out, like right now, you know, these are all very realistically done. And they look more interesting than the portraits that I was doing before. And I'm happy with the results, but I'd like to find something that is a little bit more illustrative, something in between like these sorts of pieces that fits kind of like the other things that I draw a little bit more. But certainly I'm very happy with these pieces. Like, I feel like I've come a long way, especially, oh, by the way, this is a drawn from imagination piece. All of these others are from Pinterest, just photos and portraits of people on Pinterest. I've obviously made a lot of progress drawing over the years, but my progress was dramatically faster in 2022. I don't think it needed to take me 4 years to go from drawing portraits like this in 2018 to drawing portraits like this in 2022. For me, I think it was the focused study on anatomy, on shading and highlighting the planes of the face, and focusing on color. I'm planning to pull together a class this fall to bring all of those things that I wish that I would have been focusing on in the beginning in specific detail. Who knows, by the time you're watching this, maybe I've already come out with the class, and if I have, I'm sure I'll leave a link in the description of this video when it is live. But in the meanwhile, I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments, what has helped you draw faces better? Or what are things that are really difficult for you when it comes to drawing faces? I love hearing from you. Thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful. Subscribe if you're interested in more art making content, or check out another one of my videos. Happy art making!